Today, we're going to be talking about stairs. Specifically, we'll be discussing the fastest way to go up and down stairs. There's oftentimes some misconceptions that circulate about how to traverse stairs the quickest, but today I'll set the record straight. Now, first I should clarify, this video is mainly about saving time during speedruns of the game. These tips are correct and will save time in casual play, but some of them only save fractions of a second for fairly precise conditions being met, so don't feel obligated to use them. Another thing, Resident Evil Outbreak runs at 30 frames per second on the NTSC versions, which was what was used to gather the data for this video. Some of the speeds used in this video will be represented in game units per frame, or just U per F for short. I will later convert these frame-based speeds into easier to understand second-based speeds. With that out of the way though, on to the stairs. First, we're going to be starting off in Outbreak. These stairs are right in the camera and will be perfect for the purposes of demonstrating some of the concepts and establishing speeds. When you look at these stairs facing them head on, how many ways do you think you could go up them at full speed and get different results? One, you might guess, maybe two. Just hold running up and tackling up the stairs. The actual answer is 4. This is due to how tackling interacts with stairs, base speeds being different while doing different animations, and also the amount of time that you need to hold up and run before your character actually starts moving being different depending on what you're standing on. First, let's establish exactly how fast Kevin is moving while doing these 3 actions. Running at full speed on level ground, Kevin will move forward 1 unit per 6 frames, or 5 units per second. From a standstill on level ground, Kevin takes 6 frames to begin moving forward. This startup time is increased to 8 frames if Kevin tackled immediately before holding running up. This is generally the fastest speed Kevin can achieve, so we'll use this as a baseline of 100%. The second action is when Kevin is running upstairs. When Kevin runs upstairs, he actually slows down significantly. Going upstairs has a base speed of 1 unit per 20 frames. That's only 30% of his full running speed. As a bit of a pittance, the startup time for beginning to move from a standstill while you stand on stairs is only 2 frames instead of the normal 6 while on level ground, and this 2-frame window isn't impacted by tackling right beforehand. However, 30% still is far from acceptable, so we'd naturally want to spend as little time as possible at this speed. This brings us on to our next piece of movement tech. When Kevin tackles, he moves forward 2 units during an animation that he can re-trigger every 34 frames. Simplifying this expression gives us a movement speed of 1 unit per 17 frames, or very slightly faster than running upstairs normally. It clocks in at around 35% full running speed. Still not great, but better than 30%. Now we can get into the 4 different ways you can go up these stairs, and tally up how long each one takes. First, the main thing that you'd want to focus on is the position of where your character finishes the tackling animation. This is what the game will use when determining how long your startup running animation is. The first way to go up the stairs is the one that everyone would expect. You approach the stairs going full speed, then you spend 2.8 seconds in the 30% speed stair running animation. Then you return to full speed at the top of the stairs. Both of these transitions on and off the stairs happen seamlessly since the player is just running forward uninterrupted. So this method clocks in at 2.8 seconds not spent at full speed. The next scenario is running full speed towards the stairs, going up them slightly and then tackling, ending the tackle farther up the stairs. Then there's a running startup animation that triggers after the tackle, and finally you run the rest of the way up the stairs before regaining full speed. Breaking this down, you get 0.8 seconds of running up the stairs at 30% speed, 1.13 seconds performing a tackle at roughly 35% speed, then 2 frames or 0.06 seconds of running startup time since Kevin is considered as being on the stairs, and then there was 0.6 more seconds of running up the stairs at 30% speed until the end. Adding this all up, you get 2.6 seconds of game time for this method, saving a very slight amount of time over running up normally. The third method is going up the stairs a little bit farther, then tackling. Then the running startup checks where Kevin is at. In this scenario, the tackle brought Kevin further than the top of the stairs and onto level ground. Seeing that Kevin is on level ground, the game assigns an 8-frame or 0.26 second running startup animation before Kevin starts moving once again. Adding all of these up, we have 1.4 seconds running at 30% speed, a 1.13 second tackle at 35%, and then a 0.26 second startup animation, then back to full speed. This all adds up to 2.8 seconds in game time. This barely breaks even with running up normally, but as I'll address in a bit, it's likely to actually be slower during an actual run. Now we can move on to the final and most effective way to go up the stairs. Some of you may have already figured it out by what I've been outlining already. In this example, you approach the stairs at full running speed, then go up a certain amount of distance so that when you tackle, you'll land right near the very edge of where the stairs meet the level ground at the top. If you finish your tackle animation at the correct spot, the game will think you're on stairs and use the shorter 2-frame running startup animation, but you'll also be so close to the top of the stairs that you'll immediately enter the seamless transition from running on stairs to running full speed. I call this an edge bug. This may not sound like much difference just yet, but it can add up time-wise if you hit it consistently. If we add up the times in this example, we have 1.3 seconds running up the stairs at 30% speed, a 1.13 second tackle at 35%, then the 0.06 second startup time, then you're immediately back at full speed. This comes to 2.5 seconds total on this specific staircase. That saves 0.3 seconds in-game time just by knowing how to go upstairs properly. If you go up 3 staircases in one run, that's a whole second you're saving over your competition. Although, usually in the speedrun, we would already have a weapon equipped by this staircase, so the specific staircase can't really use this to save time, but the idea still holds across other staircases. Now, before we approach the next scenario, I'll set a couple of things straight. The math used in this video for tackles and other special moves assumes that you can use these moves frame perfectly. Therefore, the speeds that they accomplish for every move beyond a single tackle or other special move will likely be a slightly slower speed than calculated by a few percentage points due to human error. So a thing to keep in mind, and something that will come up in our next example, is that sometimes, if the staircase is long enough, it may be faster to run most of the length normally and then tackle just once near the end for the small speed boost of a single tackle. However, if you spend enough time to get the hang of timing the tackles you input at the precise timing of every 34, or maybe even 35 or 36 frames, then you may be able to tackle several times consistently to gain very close to the maximum speed of 35% for tackles. The next scenario we will be visiting is Decisions. The staircase I'll be using as an example here is the one that leads to Peter down in his secret room. This staircase is a good example of one that would take multiple tackles to cover the entire area, and it also has an interesting interaction with the cutscene where the player discovers Peter's corpse. For this example, I won't go into every single possible way to go down the stairs, since we've already established that some of them are never going to be faster. Here, I'll compare going down the stairs normally to just going down with 4 tackles and then a third separate method. Starting off, just running down the stairs takes 5.1 seconds at 33.5% speed. You might wonder why this percentage is higher than the previous example, but I'll address that in a moment. Next, if you run down between 1 and 2 stairs and then tackle 4 times in a row to finish with an edge bug, then the time would be 4.9 seconds assuming frame perfect tackles. Lastly, this third scenario is more of a useful strategy for human runs. Because a human cannot consistently hit frame perfect tackles 100% of the time, naturally a real person would be slower than the optimal 4.9 second time. Every frame that you're late in beginning any of the 3 tackles after the first is equivalent to losing 0.03 seconds of time. This may not sound like much, but it's very easy to lose multiple frames per tackle due to imprecision. This makes it so most times, a human will likely be slower by using the 4 tackle method instead of just running downwards normally, since you'd only need to lose an average of 3 frames per tackle to break even with the normal speed, and if you lost any more than that, you'd be slower. So the optimal human viable method for staircases that take more than 1 tackle is to walk down them and space it so you tackle once and land on the edge, resuming full ground speed as quickly as possible. However, this is where it gets slightly more nuanced. The player's speed is different depending on whether Kevin is going up the stairs or down the stairs. Going upwards like we did in Outbreak, or on the way out of Peter's study, Kevin's stair running speed is 30% like I mentioned earlier. But going downstairs, Kevin goes slightly faster, about 33.5% his maximum speed. Again, this may not sound like much, but let me put it like this. Going downward, you only have an average of 3 frames of leeway per tackle on this staircase before you are officially slower than just walking it. But going upwards, the total time it would take would be 5.66 seconds, giving you an average of 7.3 frames per tackle of leeway before you're officially slower than normally running up them. This number is a lot more reasonable, and if you're mashing the button in practice, you can easily tackle 4 times and be faster than otherwise, at least when going upwards. There is one more piece of nuance that I mentioned for a moment before that only applies to this specific staircase. I'm not sure exactly why this happens, but it's similar to some other cases. In this game, when you walk into a cutscene trigger, after the cutscene is finished, you'll be placed back to where you were when the cutscene began. But if you tackle into a cutscene trigger like this one on the Outbreak footbridge, then after the cutscene concludes, you'll be placed where you were when you began your tackle. This quirk of the game is related to what I've dubbed Peter Skip. Peter Skip combines both the quirkiness of tackling into cutscenes and mixes it with the quirkiness of tackling onto the edge of stairs to confuse the game to give you full speed with the shorter startup time. Essentially, to hit Peter Skip, my first setup for it was to take between 1 and 2 audible steps down the stairs and then do 4 tackles and run immediately forward into the cutscene. If you drew the trick correctly, then after the cutscene concludes, you'll be placed at the foot of the stairs where the end of your last tackle was. This saves about a second on its own, but after I give a couple tips for timing, I'll explain the best human viable strategy for this room. At the bottom of the stairs, if you hear any stair clicks as Kevin starts to move, then you didn't go far enough, and you need to walk slightly further before you begin your tackles. If you get the longer startup delay at the bottom of the stairs, then you went too far. The area you're aiming for to get this trick to work is fairly precise, a little bit more precise than the edge bug itself, so don't be discouraged if you can't get it very easily. Now for the optimal way to take this room. You'll want to walk down the stairs most of the way and ideally tackle once, landing at the edge and get a Peter Skip. Then after the cutscene, execute a quick turn and immediately tackle 4 times, then run forward. That's about the fastest a human can do this room. That's about all I have for tackling versus running normally, but there are 2 more examples that I'd like to address that have more bearing in the speedrunning of File 2. Firstly, as Kevin, never tackle in the stairs whatsoever on File 2. It's always slower. The next example we'll take a look at though is on Wild Things. The current route on Very Hard and Nightmare both use an Alyssa type, which gives us a new tool to use on the stairs, the backdash. Now, it's important to note, the units in File 2 are a bit smaller than File 1, so the raw units per second speed will go up, but the characters mostly move similar actual speeds to their File 1 counterparts. I'll still be converting the speeds into percentages of the full running speed for clarity's sake, so there's no need to worry. With Alyssa, her full running speed is 20 units per second, her tackling speed is roughly 7.1 units per second, and her stair running speed is about 5.71 units per second. The backdash is a great tool with a slight drawback. The backdash can be executed 2 frames more often than a tackle if you do it frame perfectly. A tackle can be input every 34 frames, and a backdash every 32 frames. Not only this, but the backdash actually covers more distance per dash than a tackle. Every tackle goes 8 units forward, but a backdash covers 13 units backward. This all sounds great, but the drawback is that you'll need to execute a quick turn both before and after you do your backdashes if you want to use that movement to go forward instead of backward. This isn't the end of the world though, as a quick turn only takes 12 frames before you're allowed free movement again. This means that the longer the staircase is, and the more backdashes that are needed to cover that distance, the more time backdashing actually will save over other methods since the quick turns are a fixed amount of time investment. Doing the math with running speed at 100%, stair running speed comes in at 28.5%, tackling is 35.5%, and backdashing is an astounding 61% of full running speed. From my short time of testing, I'd say that backdashing is definitely faster on stairs if you have to do 2 or more dashes. If you only need to do 1 though, then the quick turns may end up eating more time than a backdash saves, although I'm not 100% sure of that. And the final example we'll be looking at is playing as Jim in Flashback. We use a different Jim type than base Jim usually for speedrunning purposes, but this is simply a demonstration, so base Jim will suffice. Jim's base running speed is 7.5 units per second, and his stair running speed is 2.86 units per second, or about 38.1% of his base speed. Jim also has access to the dive move. This move will move Jim forward at a rate of 5 units over 25 frames, before getting off the ground, taking some extra time, and moving backwards 2 units. Since it moves backward and takes a long time, this isn't really a faster method of movement in the majority of situations. However, there is at least one situation where diving is faster, diving into a loading zone, like the ones at the top and bottom of most staircases in Flashback. The initial burst of 5 units forward the dive has gives a speed of 6 units per second, or 80% of Jim's base running speed. So most of the time when playing Flashback, we'll go a few steps up or down the stairs, just enough for a dive forward to reach the loading zone. Then execute that dive so we're moving at that 80% speed instead of the 38.1%. With all of that said, I'll summarize. In File 1, tackling up the stairs is almost always faster the whole way, but tackling downstairs is only usually faster for a human if you tackle once near the end of the stairs, You always want to aim for getting an edge bug, so you get the stairs running startup timer, but go right into the full speed of running on a level surface. Peter Skip also saves a solid amount of time and is worth going for if you want to try and set any world record times on DD. In File 2, you never want to tackle on stairs as Kevin, since he gained a different, longer tackle animation in File 2. In the situations where you play as an Alyssa type, you almost always want to quick turn, backdash up or down the stairs, and then quick turn again. It may be slower if you only have to backdash once, but I haven't tested. It could very well just be as fast or a bit faster than normal running on stairs. And finally, in the situations where you play as a gym type, flashback specifically, you'll want to run slightly up or down the stairs just enough for a dive maneuver to hit the loading zone. These are the fastest methods of traversing stairs in Resident Evil Outbreak. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.